Hello everybody in the chess world. Today I'm going to show you the Averbach variation against the King's Indian. So what is the Averbach variation? Basically we'll have this typical King's Indian defense. Bishop on e2 castles, bishop on g5. So yeah, it's this bishop on e2 plus bishop on g5. This is the Averbach variation. So as I usually do, to actually illustrate what is the idea behind this sequence of moves, I like to compare it with what was usually played always, in the first periods where we started seeing the King's Indian, let's say 1940s, 1950s. Wow, I mean, this was usually what we all saw, white playing against the King's Indian. This is why this scheme with knight on f3 is called the classical variation. I mean, to this day, this is what we see more often, knight f3, e5, this is typical. So, instead of playing knight on f3 here, playing bishop on g5. So, let us compare it with the classical variation. What are the ideas behind this Averbach variation? Well, basically we have four main things as to pinpoint in comparison with the classical variation. So first, the obvious one, simply different placement of the pieces with different possibilities. Okay, quite obvious. The second one is speculation. So this knight on g1 did not go to f3. Maybe one day, if we move this bishop, it'll go to e2. Maybe it'll go to h3. Maybe we'll play h4 and then h3. Okay, it's not clear, but we can say that the knight doesn't have this automatic knight on f3. The third point is that there is a bishop on e2 and there is no knight on f3. So we have all the strength, nothing is blocking it. If we want at any point in the game, we might go for h4, h5. And that is definitely another feature in this Averbach variation. And fourth, last but not least, okay, in the classical variation with knight on f3, the almost eternal move, and to this day main move for black is e5. Well, turns out that in the Averbach with bishop on g5, we have prevented e5, at least for one tempo. Of course, I'm not saying that this won't be possible, but hey, e5 is simply unplayable now because we can just take, exchange queens, and taking advantage of this pin right here, we'll just go for knight on d5, where we're hitting, this knight and the c7 point at the same time. So yeah, I mean, it's like that. Or of course, if knight takes knight, yeah, we're always kind of going for an exchange. So another point is we prevented that. Now, I really like some of the things of like the history of this opening, because the first time I saw this was from the Kasparov's book, The Proof of Time. He was showing that knight bd7 is basically one of the main moves. This way black tries to make the e5 move possible. And it's funny because I like how the development of history in a particular opening. In this main game was Kasparov with the black pieces playing against Albert. This was the game. And Kasparov here plays queen on c1, interesting move. So immediately on his book he explains why not the most natural queen on d2. So he explains, in case of queen on d2, after the e5 normal central move by black, if I play d5, black will play knight on c5. And now they are effectively hitting the e4 pawn with the two knights, even though this knight right here is pinned. Because my queen is on d2, and from d2 a black knight will attack her, now the e4 pawn is really threatened. So I will have to make some uncomfortable move like, well, either bishop on f3, definitely uncomfortable, not what he wanted to do, or f3. While in the game, when he played queen on c1, the same sequence is not possible. After e5, d5, knight c5, he just plays b4 and there's no problem. Of course, I mean, he's explained, with the queen on d2, look at the same sequence. Well, now, let us say I play b4. Well, knight c takes on e4, because after knight takes e4, knight takes e4 is possible. If bishop takes queen, knight takes queen. So this is basically the reason why he plays the queen on c1 instead of on d2. But it's really funny to me how this kept being developed. Some years later, queen d2 started to be a good move, and when black played like this, Well, white actually did play this uncomfortable move, described by Kasparov f3 with a particular idea, because the idea was to recycle this bishop through d1 to c2 or b3, but normally c2, let us say the b1 h7 diagonal. So this f3 move, which seemed uncomfortable, well, the idea is this: I'm gonna play bishop on d1, taking this diagonal, and leaving that square for a knight on g2. For example, a game followed a5. This is classical. White was ready to play before. With a5, black prevents that, and immediately bishop d1 is interesting. So when black hit the center with c6, knight g2 came. This was white's idea. C takes, knight takes. Okay, c takes is a more normal move. I'm sure it's quite possible. In this particular game, knight takes d5 came. So black took the opportunity to play knight on e6, hitting the bishop, but the bishop went to e6, also covering d4. And the game followed knight d7, castles, knight dc5, bishop c2, finally taking that b1 h7 diagonal, bishop on d7, knight ec3, reinforcing the great d5 outpost for a knight. I mean, this is an unclear position, but really I love that, evolution sometimes of the ideas on the openings. But okay, so going back to our main Averbach position, we saw this knight bd7, and after queen on c1, for example, in this game, Albert plays c5. This is kind of classical in a way. If white was making a good job of preventing e5, well, black goes for the other central break they have available, this c5. And after d5, Albert went for this b5, kind of like a Volga gambit, Benko gambit. C takes, Kasparov went for this b5. So c takes b5, a6, a4, and queen on a5 was the move by Kasparov. This is fine. Bishop d2, he played a6, b5, which is fine. And after knight takes b5, well, queen on b6. I think white's slightly better here. But okay, this was Albert versus Kasparov. This was like the main game that was there explaining the ideas of this e5 and stuff. But I want to go to our main feature game, which will be Kaidanov with against Sherzer. So after bishop on g5, the truth is that the main line is always c5. Knight bd7, as I showed before, is an idea to be able to play e5 effectively, which had been prevented. But c5 is definitely the main line. And after d5, e6. This is classical. White, black goes to occupy, put a pawn in the center. And after white advances, just hitting on that pawn immediately. And after queen on d2, again, the main line, e takes d5. Well, e takes d5 was the move in the game. C takes d5 does exist, but okay, if you're really dogmatic, you'll understand why this is usually not played. While with C takes on d5, we're basically transposing into a modern Benoni, but with the bishop on e2 kind of misplaced. Usually this bishop will probably be either on c4 or on d3. So this is one reason why C takes d5 is usually not seen here. E takes d5, and well, queen on b6. This is the main line for black. It's quite interesting. In the game, we saw knight on f3 and bishop on f5. All of this definitely the main line in this Averbach variation. But once again, main line, knight on h4. Now we saw the mistake by black, because in here, the total main line is knight on e4. White was hitting the bishop, and with knight on e4, we are hitting the queen. So this way, okay, it's a really complex line, but now at least after knight takes on e4, we recapture with the bishop, getting away from the attack of this knight, right? So in the game, we saw bishop on g4, and this is a dubious move, because after f3, just now, well, the bishop has to, the sad choice between d7 being still developed, but maybe the knight on b8 will want to go to d7, or what we saw in the game, bishop on c8. And long castles. This is why this is like the main feature game that I want to show you, because what I want to show you is, yeah, sometimes we get a great attack by white. Remember that we might throw the G and H pawns, which doesn't seem like a reality right now because we have too much traffic. You know, we have the bishop on G5 and the knight on G4. However, after the natural knight on BD7, well, now we start with the attacking moves. The bishop gets away from the G file, so someday G4 is possible, and we want to blow up the main defender of black's king, the bishop on G7. A6, black is doing, they're doing their own, you know, one day they want to just move out the queen and play B5, going for you know, white's king, you know, that has a castle long. G4, as I said before, now, the attack is just coming right away. So in the game we saw knight on E8, bishop takes, knight takes, and knight G2, once again, the evacuation of the zone, and now H4 is simply, yeah, H4 and H5. With the attack, already having exchanged the dark square bishop, the queen on D2 is ready to join the attack via G5 or H6. Hey, black looks busted here. Okay, black play F5. I guess they saw that it was a little too slow to try and move this queen to then play on B5. But F5 is, I mean, white just simply play H4, just not paying any attention. Okay, there are some tactical details. The game followed pawn takes, and here black played knight on E5, probably realizing that rook on F2, which seems like the most logical move, could be simply answered by knight on E3. And if now knight on E5, well, knight on E4, also hitting that rook. The knight is joining the attack, knight on G5 one day. Actually, after the move rooks, I'm sure we're going to just hit H5, but it's looking terrible for black. So the game followed knight on E5, but H5. Again, one of the things in the spirit of this Averbach variation. So it's a pretty solid opening. But sometimes black does, when black makes a mistake, you know, an opening mistake, well, we can just develop a really, really strong attack. So look at this. The game followed rook on F2, hitting the knight, and I mean, black has this double threat, right? Rook takes G2, and also knight takes on C4, because now this bishop is pinned. And however, well, white just played the correct H6, G6. I mean, the attack is too strong. So black play knight takes on C4, seeing that taking the knight just loses immediately to queen on H6, and there's no way to stop this attack. Knight takes on C4 is hitting the queen. But white play G takes on H7 check first, which, well, of course, black answered with king on H8. So this typical idea of black's king finding shelter behind an enemy pawn. But a knight H4 exclam. I mean, I like this kind of moves. You're just the proposition. Our proposition is simply knight on G6 mate. So you can play knight takes queen if you want. We'll let her mate. And black is desperate because there are no squares for the king. Black play knight on H5. Okay, they're just for the moment blocking the H file, but mostly giving G7 the G7 square for their king. However, knight G6 check came, and after king takes, well, first rook takes check, cashing in. You cannot even take that knight because our queen, the white queen, will invade. King G8 came. I think that now the quickest mate was actually to go for rook checks and rook checks. But black was thinking about, okay, before resigning, at least I'm hitting the queen, and the queen will not be able to leave the second, you know, the row because of queen takes b2 mate. Let us make a few more moves to see what happens. Again, I think rook h8 check was the quickest way here, but white played knight on a4, and it's a pretty smart move because, well, again, if now, I mean, if we wouldn't be able to play, I don't know, queen on c7 because we're not threatening mate on b2 anymore. Actually, with the knight on a4, white has just done that, controlling this mate, so there's not even this ghost of counterplay for black. So, okay, black exchange queens, but after knight takes and rook takes, simply knight takes a8 game, and black resigned here. So, Okay, this is I just scratched the surface of this Averbach variation. This is something that I am sometimes faced with the black pieces. This is interesting. So going back to the main line, yes, this is actually the main line, the main battlefield for both sides in this line. And again, I think this is quite an interesting thing for this opening. White is playing really solid in comparison with other King's Indian variations initially. But then there is like this hypo feeling, like being underwater. But if you let me, I'll lash out and have h4, h5, or g4, and these interesting attacks. And of course, as I said before, I love this thing of the evolution of a line, with this thing of, Kasparov showing after knight bd7 in his book, I think it's from 81, the proof of time. Now, queen c1 instead of queen on d2, and some years later, White saying, okay, you know what, I am going to play that, but because I found this bishop on d2 idea with, at the same time, idea of bishop on c2 followed by knight g on e2. And yeah, I really like this exchange or silent exchange of ideas that happens sometimes in a lot of openings. So, probably I'll make a second video going for the main line, which we'll see this knight on e4. But for the moment, I think that was enough. So I'll leave my cat citroneta as usual to ask you to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I will see you next time. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.